Namaste and welcome to our continuing series, The Life Divine with Ranganath. We are on the chapter Indeterminates, Cosmic Determinations and the Indeterminable on page number 311, second paragraph from It Is Possible.
Before we read this para, very small summary of what he has said in the previous para. Okay? He says, the first knowledge we get is of the physical world. But the knowledge that is available to us is of processes, not the essentials, of superficials, not the roots. We know the hows and not the whys. Okay, we know the how of things, but not the why of things. That escapes us in the physical world. Okay, that's what he said in the previous para. Very small. Now we go on to the next. It is possible indeed to question the need of positing an infinite which contains our formed universe. Although this conception is imperatively demanded by our mind as a necessary basis to its conceptions, for it is unable to fix or assign a limit, whether in space or time or essential existence beyond, which there is nothing, or before or after which there is nothing. Although too the alternative is a void or nihil, which can be only an abyss of the infinite into which we refuse to look. An infinite mystic zero of non-existence would replace an infinite X as a necessary postulate, a basis for our seeing of all that is to us existence. But even if we refuse to recognize anything as real, except the limitless expanding finite of the material universe and its teeming determinations, the enigma remains the same. Infinite existence, infinite non-being, or boundless finite are all to us original indeterminates or indeterminables. We can assign to them no distinct characters or features, nothing which would predetermine their determinations. To describe the fundamental character of the universe as space or space-time does not help us, for even if these are not abstractions of our intelligence which we impose by our mental view on the cosmos, the mind's necessary perspective of its picture, these too are indeterminates and carry in themselves no clue to the origin of the determinations that take place in them. There is still no explanation of the strange process by which things are determined or of their powers, qualities and properties, no revelation of their true nature, origin and significance. So, we'll do one thing. I'll read out the summary of what he's saying, then we'll discuss in detail. Okay? Because we must get the basic idea of what he's saying. But one may question the need of postulating, hypothesizing an infinite. Why should we think of an infinite at all? Okay? But the mind insists on it. If there is a finite only, the mind questions what is there beyond that point. Even if we say only a void, still it's an infinite void. Okay? That infinite is still a mystery. How does that unknown, indeterminate infinite produce the finite, known determinates of the universe? Okay? This is what he's saying. So, we go back to the beginning of the para and we see what he's saying. You remember what he said in the previous one? All the determinates in the physical world, all the forms, are originated from something which is itself formless. That which is the origin of all these things is the formless, the infinite the absolute, the immutable, the featureless. It is that which is giving these features. And there also he has discussed two possibilities. One is an absolute void, and the other is a blank. He has used these two words. A void, which means there is nothing in it, and a blank, which seems to be nothing, but contains everything like the seed.
Yes.
So,
And I read like in the lexicon where, I mean, Sri Aurobindo is defining the void as Chit and Shanti.
okay.
Yeah, like he says void is not empty as you're saying, but it is filled with consciousness and Shanti.
Yeah, then he would use the word blank.
Blank.
Okay. So that's why he's saying. Because the Buddhists say the ultimate is nothing, nihil. They use the word nihil. It's a question of interpretation. So, if you keep that in mind, we'll read what he's saying. It is possible indeed to question the need of positing an infinite which contains our formed universe. When we look at the universe, we don't see any end to it. Okay? So naturally the mind wonders, where is this, how far does it go, the universe? And if you think of a limit, then the question arises, what is there beyond that limit? And you can't answer that. Okay? It's a mystery. What would there be beyond that limit? So that's why he's saying, although this conception is imperatively demanded by our mind as a necessary basis to its conceptions, okay, you can't think of a finite. You have to think of something which goes on and on. For it is unable to fix or assign a limit, whether in space or time, or essential existence beyond which there is nothing, or before or after which there is nothing. Now, what's the difference between the formed universe, and he's also talking of the essential existence and something in space and time. Space and time is our universe, which is there, and we experience it through our senses. But when he's talking of essential existence, he is speaking of the origin. He is speaking of the origin. Essential existence would be the Sat. Okay? So that also is a mystery to us. Okay? So essential existence, beyond which there is nothing, okay? Or before or after which there is nothing. Okay? So you have to use your imagination to see what he is saying. If the origin of everything is a nothing, very difficult for the mind to conceive of it, basically. Although too, the alternative is a void or nihil, there you are, which can be only an abyss of the infinite into which we refuse to look. We refuse to look because the mind is not capable of going beyond and picturing something beyond that. Okay? That's why. An infinite mystic zero of non-existence would replace an infinite X as a necessary postulate, a basis for our seeing of all that is to us existence. Existence is the physical world, and the non-existence is that featurelessness from which the physical world is coming. So, an infinite mystic zero of non-existence. It's a mystic, it's a zero, but it creates, the non-existence creates the infinite existence. A basis for our seeing of all that is to us existence. This whole discussion is taking place because when you make your mind silent and your consciousness goes out of the body-mind life, this is what you express. This is what you experience. You experience the self, which is absolute, infinite, eternal, immutable, and featureless. This is the nature of the faith. So when it is featureless, is it a blank or a void is the question that comes up. Okay, that's what he says. But even if we refuse to recognize anything as real, that's what the ascetic does. That's what he's saying. Even if we refuse to recognize anything as real, except the limitless, expanding finite of the material universe, and its teeming determinations, he's talking of the materialist. Even if we refuse to recognize anything as real, except the limitless, expanding finite. This is the view of the materialist. of the material universe and its teeming determinations, the enigma remains the same. What is the enigma? We can't explain. How it is that nothing is producing something. Remains the same. Infinite existence, infinite non-being, or boundless finite, he is giving a different word, are all to us original indeterminates. We can't think of them or give any features to it. Or indeterminables also they may be. Maybe we'll never come to be able to find out what they are. We can assign to them no distinct characters or features, nothing which would predetermine their determinations. The determinations of the physical world are coming from something indeterminate. Can we see some form of determinates in the indeterminate? He's saying no. Okay. Just like biologically also, if you see, you take the seed and blow it up and look under a electronic microscope. Will you see flowers and fruits? And you won't. You won't. That's what he's saying. Okay. That which is a blank seems to produce all the determinates. Okay. So it's a mystery. How does that happen? So, nothing which would predetermine their determinations. In other words, can I see the blueprint of a leaf or a fruit in the seed? Even that is not possible. That's what he's saying. That's why it is such a mystery. Okay. To describe the fundamental character of the universe as space or time. Okay. Now he is going into other as space or time or space-time does not help us. For even if these are not abstractions of our intelligence, which we impose by our mental view on the cosmos, the mind's necessary perspective of its picture, you have to necessarily think of the physical world as space and time. Time is very obvious, space also. When we measure distance, there is space. So the mind's necessary perspective of its picture. Time and space are necessary for the mind to understand things. These two are indeterminates and carry in themselves no clue to the origin of the determinations that take place in them. So what is there outside space? What is there outside time? We can't know. That's what he's saying. That take place in them. There is still no explanation of the strange process by which things are determined or of their powers, qualities and properties, no revelation of their true nature, origin and significance. So, this is what basically he is saying. There does not seem to be any explanation which connects the infinite with the finite, that which is the formless with the form. What is the connection? We don't see the gradual evolution of it.
But as we move to the higher planes of the mind, can we draw the bridge between the two?
You can understand, but not with the mind.
Not with the mind.
With your consciousness, you will be able to understand.
But not with the mind, but what about the higher planes of mind?
Yes.
Like
the instruments of knowledge which are available at those levels.
Those levels, right.
Okay. Then you can understand. But it is ineffable. To the mind, it is ineffable. You can't put it into words because words belong to the mind. That's basically what he's saying. Okay?
But you have also mentioned like the duality exists in the higher planes of mind. So when we say that it is possible at the higher planes to draw the connection between the determinate and the indeterminate, but there will be distortions even in those planes, right?
Okay. That question Srimad deals with, even in this way. Okay, remember basic three levels. Level 1, the physical world of forms. Okay. Level 2, the spiritual planes of consciousness, where your view of things changes completely. You said that duality exists there, they don't. Okay.
Oh, they don't.
I'll tell you why. Okay.
But you once said no, dualities exist till the illumined mind.
Not dualities, not the dualities as understood normally, but the difference between spirit and matter. So that duality is there.
Okay.
But not the other dualities of falsehood, truth,
right,
and hot and cold, no.
No, right.
Those disappear in the mind. Precisely because there is no morality in the spiritual planes of consciousness. Okay? morality beyond good and evil. They become complementary aspects of the same truth. So in the spiritual planes of consciousness, there is no morality. There is no duality. But the difference between spirit and matter
remains.
That is the problem.
That's a good.
That can be solved only at the supramental level, the third level. Okay? So, even if you see, science knows that we have, Srimli himself will give that example. Hydrogen and oxygen, if you bring them together, it produces water. There is no sign of water in oxygen, no sign of water in hydrogen. And yet when you bring them together, it makes that. How is that possible? It's impossible. The other thing also which you can think of is, take all elements have number of electrons around a nucleus. You add only one more electron and the character of the thing changes altogether. Gold becomes silver, silver becomes gold. So, how does that happen? Same thing with light also. You change the vibration and the color changes. Red becomes blue, blue becomes... So how does that happen? We don't know. We know it happens, but we don't know how it happens. In fact, that's alchemy. Theoretically, it is possible to create gold by adding electrons to and the number required.
In fact, now they are making artificial gold diamond, not gold, diamond. I've heard it from someone. They are making diamond in laboratories. So the same process which happens in nature, they're doing it in laboratories.
Okay. But that is slightly different because diamond is not an element.
Right.
Diamond is carbon. And under pressure they make it a diamond.
Right.
That is a different thing. But I am talking only the elements. Okay. And that is a complicated thing. Right. So you can so it's impossible to understand how that happens. Actually, I am reading the next para. Actually, to our science, this infinite or indeterminate existence reveals itself as an energy. That we can see. That the energy, matter is energy, even science is saying. Okay? Known not by itself, but by its works, which throws up in its motion waves of energism, and in them a multitude of infinitesimals. Now this is a very interesting, I'll finish the para and then we come back to it. Okay. These, grouping themselves to form larger infinitesimals, become a basis for all the creations of the energy, even those farthest away from the material basis, for the emergence of a world of organized matter, for the emergence of life, for the emergence of consciousness, for all the still unexplained activities of evolutionary nature. On the original process are erected a multitude of processes which we can observe, follow, can take advantage of many of them, utilize, but they are none of them fundamentally explicable. We can use it, but we can't explain why. What? We know now that different groupings and varying number of electric infinitesimals can produce or serve as a constituent occasion miscalled the cause. For here, there seems to be only a necessary antecedent condition for the appearance of larger atomic infinitesimals of different natures, qualities, powers. But we fail to discover how these different dispositions can come to constitute these different atoms, how they differentiate in the constituent occasion or cause, necessitate the differentiate in the constituted outcome or result. We know also that certain combinations of certain invisible atomic infinitesimals produce or occasion new and visible determinations, quite different in nature, quality and power from the constituent infinitesimals. But we fail to discover For instance, how a fixed formula for the combination of oxygen and hydrogen comes to determine the appearance of water, which is evidently something more than a combination of gases, a new creation, a new form of substance, a material manifestation of a quite new character. We see that a seed develops into a tree. We follow the line of the process of production and we utilize it. We can utilize, we know how to do it. But we do not discover how a tree can grow out of a seed, how the life and form of a tree comes to be implied in the substance or energy of the seed, or if that be rather the fact, how the seed can develop into a tree. We know that genes and chromosomes are the cause of hereditary transmissions, not only of physical but psychological variations. But we do not discover how psychological characteristics can be contained and transmitted in this inconscient material vehicle. We do not see or know, but it is expounded to us as a cogent account of nature process, that a play of electrons, of atoms, and their resultant molecules, of cells, glands, chemical secretions, and physiological processes manages by their activity on the nerves and brain of a Shakespeare or a Plato to produce, or could be perhaps the dynamic occasion for the production of a Hamlet or a Symposium or a Republic. But we fail to discover or appreciate how such material movements could have composed or necessitated the composition of these highest points of thought and literature. The divergence here of the determinants and the determination becomes so wide that we are no longer able to follow the process, much less understand or utilize. These formulae of science may be pragmatically correct and infallible. They may govern the practical how of nature's processes, but they do not disclose the intrinsic how or why. The intrinsic how or why. Rather, they have the air of the formulae of a cosmic magician. Precise, irresistible, automatically successful, each in its field, but the rationale is fundamentally unintelligible. It's a big para, but basically what he's saying is, we'll go into detail, but basically what he's saying is, we know the process. We know that a tree becomes comes from a seed. A tree seed becomes a tree. But how does it happen? It's a mystery. That's basically what he's saying in this long para. Okay? So, and then there is a very interesting, he's referring to Hamlet and Symposium and the Republic. You remember that sonnet? Yeah. A committee of glands sat on the Aegean Sea and composed the Iliad. He says, that's what science is. How can a committee of glands do that? That's what he is also poking fun at. There he is having fun. Here also he is saying the same thing. How can physical things produce psychological things?
Right. And I feel whenever something like great manifests, it is the higher consciousness through which it comes, right? So that's why he is giving a sarcastic take on it.
Yeah. Even when you say that, even when we say that, we can understand mentally.
Yeah.
That yes, the seed contains chromosomes and genes and all that.
Yeah.
But it does not explain how. How does it happen? We know now that the RNA and DNA, okay, there is a spiral and all the characteristics of each one, there are specific units in that RNA and DNA which determine the color of your eyes, the color of your skin, the size of your nose, everything is there. So in fact there are, I think about, they call it the genome, I think. It is about 32,000. If you get 32,000 characteristics, you can fix a man's, you can, so it was that Har Gobind Khurana, in Canada. He is an Indian, but he discovered the possibility of genetic engineering. That means you go to the RNA and the parents say, I want a child with blue eyes. Okay, I'll do it. You go to that, change that, and change the thing. It's possible to do it. Possibility of genetic engineering.
Like there is the stem cell research as well, where to cure cancer, you replace those malfunctioning cells with properly functioning cells, and then you can cure cancer as well. But then there is also science which is sort of questioning the hereditary aspect, and how we are not sort of determined by our genes and everything. So there is a book called Biology of Beliefs, which talks about this breaking of this whole hereditary and genetic dependency, and how our psychology is sort of derived from our genes. It is questioning that, so it is not your genes, but it is your thoughts and your so so there are both sides to the
The burden of what he's saying is we are ignorant of how these things happen.
So that's why we keep postulating new and new theories.
That's right. So we can go back to the beginning of the, and there's something interesting also. We'll see whether we can understand that. So I go back to the beginning of the para. Actually, to our science, this infinite or indeterminate existence, which is the origin of everything, reveals itself as an energy. Okay. So this much even science is saying, that matter is energy, and matter is going on producing forms, known not by itself, but by its works. Now that's interesting. Okay, we know that energy is producing forms. We know that life is producing forms. But do we see life itself? We don't see life. We see the forms of life. That's highly interesting. We see energy. Okay? There is mechanical energy, there is chemical energy, there is muscular energy. But do we see the energy? We don't. We see only the result. That's what he's saying. That's interesting, is what he's saying. Okay? He's saying, known not by itself, but by its works. The results of energy we see. Okay? So, exactly the same thing like life and the trees and animals. We see trees and animals, which is a production of life. But life do we see? We don't. By its works, which throws up in its motion waves of energism. Now that's an interesting thing. Why I'm using the word energism and energy. The energy is a general energy which is the source of all the energisms. A storm is an energism. A wave is an energism. Okay?
The magnetic waves are energies.
All these are energisms, forms of energy. Energy is the root cause, and all it expresses itself in different ways. Those are the energisms. Okay? So, and in them, a multitude of infinitesimals. Multitude of infinitesimals. We can now, I think, the next thing, we can imagine the biologically, we can try and understand what he's saying. These infinitesimals, grouping themselves to form larger infinitesimals, becomes a basis for the creations of the energy. So, that's what he's saying. Because life, when it has to come into existence, dead matter is there are atoms. But all life has to produce tissue which is living. And tissue which is living has to have molecules. And molecules are nothing but a collection of atoms. So, when they come together, they produce molecules. And these molecules again come together to produce living tissue. That's what he's saying. So, here you can almost replace the word energy with life. Okay? Life is only one form of energy, remember. Okay? Life is not energy itself, it's a form of energy. Basis for all creation of energy. Even those farthest away from the material basis for the emergence of a world of organized matter, for the emergence of life, for the emergence of consciousness, for all the still unexplained activities of evolutionary nature. Who is doing all this? Energy. Now, what is the first form of energy? He is saying organized matter. Now, why is he saying organized matter? What is the difference between matter and organized matter? Stone is matter, but it's not organized matter. Organized matter is life. When life comes, it is organizing itself in such a way that it makes sense. Okay. Otherwise, matter is just dead matter. So, organized matter is, you can say that. Or you can also say that the inconscient is matter. And organized matter has got electrons and things. That also we can say in that way. In fact, that would be more accurate, I think. Okay. So, because he is mentioning life separately. That's why we have to say organized matter, because in other words, there is an unorganized matter. And the unorganized matter is inconscient. Because you go back to that Vedic statement of the inconscient, apraketam salilam. Okay, that is the words used there. So, no consciousness at all. Of that internal dynamism, full of a latent supernormal faculty, typified in yogic terminology by the Kundalini, the coiled and sleeping serpent of energy. Yeah. So, organized matter is forms of matter, but the unorganized matter would be the inconscient. To form larger infinitesimals becomes a basis for the creations of the energy, even those farthest away from the material basis. Psychologically also, that's what he's saying. For the emergence of a world of organized matter, next is for the emergence of life, for the emergence of consciousness, for all the still unexplained activities of evolutionary nature. What is he talking about? The still unexplained activities of evolutionary nature? I think he's talking of the spiritual powers that come, because we can't explain that spiritual powers. So that is, he's going beyond the mind. Okay? So, of evolutionary nature. On the original process are erected a multitude of processes which we can observe, follow, can take advantage of many of them and utilize. So note very carefully, he's saying we can take advantage of many of them, but some of them we still don't know how to take advantage. Okay? We still don't know how to take advantage. So many unexplained things are there in science. We are still trying to find out. So, multitude of processes which we can observe, follow, take advantage of many of them, utilize. But they are, none of them, fundamentally explicable. We can't understand how it happens. We know how to use electricity, but we don't know what it is. Okay? We know now that different groupings and a varying number of electrical infinitesimals can produce or serve as a constituent occasion miscalled the cause. For here there seems to be only a necessary antecedent condition for the appearance of larger atomic infinitesimals of different natures, qualities, powers. But we fail to discover how these different dispositions can come to constitute these different atoms, how they differentiate in the constituent occasion or cause, constituent occasion or cause necessitate the differentiate in the constituted outcome or result. Okay, this is pretty complicated. I would like to say. So, what does he mean by can produce or serve as a constituent occasion? Miscalled the cause. Because I think what he means is, I take oxygen and hydrogen and I put them together, I get water. So I can say the cause of water is hydrogen and oxygen. But from where is hydrogen and oxygen coming? You have to go back to another cause. Then cause. It's endless. It goes on until finally you come to an endless cause. Okay? or rather the end cause if you want, which is featureless and inexplicable. That's basically what he's saying. That's what he means by produce or serve as a constituent occasion, miscalled the cause. There's another thing also which strikes me here. It's interesting. Now they are claiming that they can produce life in the lab. Okay? They are actually making synthetic meat. This thing has come up, which is very interesting. But are you really creating life? I don't think so.
No. You're creating a form of life.
No, you are creating the conditions in which life can come
Right.
up. You can't create life. That only the Supreme can do. Okay? And life is something that already exists.
Right. Exactly. So you can't create it.
You
You can
can't
only
create it.
transform it.
Yeah. Okay? Miscalled the cause. For here there seems to be only a necessary antecedent condition. Okay? Oxygen and hydrogen are the antecedent, before, previous condition from which this comes. For the appearance of larger atomic infinitesimals of different natures, qualities, powers. But we fail to discover how these different dispositions can come to constitute these different atoms. How the differentiate in the constituent occasion or cause necessitate the differentiate in the constituted outcome or result. An indeterminate is creating a determinate, and the determinate is creating another determinate until the process goes on. But you can never explain how it is becoming this. That's the whole part. Okay. It is something, I think it is something so simple that even if you take the simplest thing, okay, take water. If you cool it, it becomes ice. How does it become ice? It should become cool water.
Right.
But it becomes ice. If you heat it, it becomes water vapor. It should become hot water. But no, it becomes water vapor. That's what he's saying. We don't know how it happens. Can't explain. Okay. But we fail to discover how. Okay. Then we know also that certain combinations of certain invisible atomic infinitesimals produce or occasion new and visible determinations, quite different in nature, quality, and power from the constituent infinitesimals, but we fail to discover, for instance, how a fixed formula for the combination of oxygen and hydrogen comes to determine the appearance of water, which is evidently something more than a combination of gases, a new creation, a new form of substance, a material manifestation of a quite new character. So he has himself given the example of hydrogen and oxygen. We can apply that everywhere. We don't know how these things change. We see that a seed develops into a tree. We follow the line of the process of production and we utilize it. We know how to use the process of take the seed and produce trees. We utilize it. But we do not discover how a tree can grow out of a seed. How the life and form of the tree come to be implied in the substance or energy of the seed. Acha, he has used the word come, okay? But because he's using two terms, life and form. Normally would have said how the life and form of the tree comes to be implied. But he has said come. Because there are two, okay, life and form. That's why when two are there, it becomes plural. Come to be implied in the substance or energy of a seed. Or, if that be rather the fact, how the seed can develop into a tree. We know that genes and chromosomes are the cause of hereditary transmissions, not only of physical but psychological variations. But we do not discover how psychological characteristics can be contained and transmitted in this inconscient material vehicle. We do not see or know, but it is expounded to us as a cogent account of nature process, that a play of electrons, of atoms, and the resultant molecules of cells, glands, chemical secretions, and psychological processes manages by their activity on the nerves and brain of a Shakespeare or a Plato to produce, or could be perhaps the dynamic occasion for the production of a Hamlet or a Symposium or a Republic. Okay? Hamlet was written by Shakespeare, Symposium and Republic by Plato. Sremendra is very fond of Plato. He thinks that Plato is the peak of the human intellect. He places Plato and Shankara as the peak of human intellect, intelligence. So, to produce or could be perhaps the dynamic equation for production of a Hamlet or Symposium or Republic. But we fail to discover or appreciate how such material movements could have composed or necessitated the composition of the highest points of thought and literature. The divergence here of the determinants and the determination becomes so wide that we are no longer able to follow the process, much less understand or utilize. So, the determinant is supposed to be the glands, and the determination is the psychological characteristics. The difference is so wide that you can't understand how it happens. That's right. He's saying, how can glands produce high literature? That's basically what he's saying. That's that fantastic sonnet. Huh? A dream of surreal science. That's what Sremendra is having fun, okay, with this sonnet. One dreamed and saw a gland write Hamlet, drink at the mermaid, capture immortality. A committee of hormones on the Aegean's brink composed the Iliad and the Odyssey. A thyroid, meditating almost nude under the bow tree, saw the eternal light, and rising from its mighty solitude, spoke of the wheel and the eightfold path all right. A brain, by a disordered stomach driven, thundered through Europe, conquered, ruled, and fell. From St. Helena went perhaps to heaven. Thus wagged on the surreal world until a scientist played with atoms and blew out the universe before God had time to shout. So, Sremendra is having a lot of fun saying that surely matter can't be the origin of everything. There has to be something else. And what is the something else? The materialist point of view that matter is producing everything, impossible to understand. But if you go to the supramental level, you can understand how it happens, but you will not be able to formulate it in words. That's the whole point. Okay. These formulae of science may be practically correct and infallible. They may govern the practical how of nature's processes. Okay? The process man knows, but they do not disclose the intrinsic how or why. Rather, they have the air of the formula of a cosmic magician, precise, irresistible, automatically successful in each field, but their rationale is fundamentally unintelligible. So, we know the process of things, but we don't know the why or how of things. Intrinsic how we don't know. The process we know. We even utilize the process. We know how to do many things. Okay, so the messing around with genetic engineering, okay, produces different things. We know how to use these processes, but we don't know. In fact, the question in science is still being debated. Okay, genetically, what is it called? Genetically organized vegetables and fruits and all these things.
Yeah.
Okay, we may be messing around with something that we don't know.
Exactly. So when we were talking about like how we cannot see the tree in the seed, so like we have tapped on to the process of nature, and we are playing around with it, fooling around and doing all kinds of things with it, but we have not tapped on to the life principle, which is the truth of it. And I feel we are really messing things up, because I just met a friend in Pune, and she is into horticulture, and she said that in Netherlands they are making like this big tomatoes, so they have increased the genetic size of it, but it is tasteless, so they are called like what water tomatoes, like water balls, because there's no taste, it's all watery but there's no taste. And they have like been very efficient with production and everything, but they're tasteless.
Yeah. Whenever you mess around with something with partial knowledge,
Right.
you are going to be in trouble later
Exactly.
on. That's basically the point.
Like the same has happened with all the hibiscus flowers. So the hibiscus flowers are the most easy to, genetically modify, because the stamens are outside and you can play around with it. So now we have lost all the original Hawaiian varieties of hibiscus. It's not there anywhere in the world. So now we have to do a process to go back to that original, maybe like a reversal process, if it is possible, who knows. So like I feel one should not play around with the processes of nature with the half knowledge. It's
Things
so
which
dangerous.
you don't know.
Yes, exactly.
A half knowledge is a dangerous thing. Okay.
Right.
There's Alexander Pope's lines are there. Okay. A half knowledge is a dangerous thing.
But in this sense, isn't everyone like having half knowledge, because no one has reached the supermind? So I mean, we are all
That's what evolution is all about.
yeah.
Okay, we stop here for today.